It was 2 in the morning when the sound hit me like a punch to the chest. A high-pitched wail, desperate and raw, cutting through the quiet of my house. I shot up in bed, heart pounding. My first thought that it was a kid crying outside. But no, this wasn't human. It was animal wild, and it was close. I grabbed my flashlight and my service pistol from the nightstand, moving fast to the front door. The spring air hit me as I stepped onto the porch, cool and sharp with the scent of pine. The noise was louder now, coming from the edge of my yard where the forest creeps up to my property line in rural Montana. I swung the flashlight beam across the grass, and there they were, 2 bear cubs, no bigger than oversized puppies, huddled together under a juniper bush. Their fur was matted, their eyes wide and glassy, and they were crying, "God!" That sound. It wasn't just fear, it was grief, like they'd lost everything. My stomach twisted. I'd seen a lot in 15 years as a cop, but this was different. I lowered the gun, my hand shaking, and took a step closer. They didn't run. They just looked at me, trembling, like I was their last hope. "Hey, it's okay," I whispered, crouching down, keeping my voice steady. "Where's your mom?" "Huh?" I scanned the darkness, half expecting a pissed-off grizzly to charge out of the trees. Nothing, just silence, except for their whimpers. Something was wrong. Bear cubs don't just show up alone, not this close to a house. I pulled out my phone and dialed Emma, the local vet. She'd know what to do. It was late, but she picked up on the second ring. "Michael, what's wrong?" Her voice was groggy but sharp, like she was already bracing for bad news. "I found 2 bear cubs in my yard," I said, keeping my eyes on them. "They're alone, crying. Something's not right." "Bear cubs?" She paused, and I could hear her moving, probably grabbing her keys. "Don't touch them yet. If the mother's nearby, she could be dangerous. I'm coming over." "Hurry," I said, and hung up. I sat there, watching the cubs, their tiny bodies shaking in the cool night air. My mind started drifting, unbidden, to Lily, my daughter. She'd be 10 now if she hadn't slipped away 5 years ago. Cancer took her fast, too fast, and left me and her mom broken. Sarah left me a year later, said she couldn't stand the silence in our house. I didn't blame her. But those cubs, their cries, they sounded like Lily when she'd wake up scared in the night, calling for me. I shook my head, trying to push the memory down. This wasn't the time. I stood up, keeping my distance, and started looking around the yard. The flashlight caught something near the cubs, a patch of torn-up dirt, like something heavy had been dragged through it. I knelt down, my pulse picking up. The marks were fresh, deep, and they didn't look like bear tracks. Too wide, too deliberate. My gut told me this wasn't natural. I followed the trail a few feet until it disappeared into the trees. Whatever had been here was gone, but it left the cubs behind. Emma's truck pulled up 20 minutes later, her headlights cutting through the dark. She stepped out, her red hair tied back, carrying a medical bag. She was younger than me, maybe 30, but she had a calmness that made you trust her. She saw the cubs and froze, her face softening. "Poor things," she said, kneeling a safe distance away. "They're terrified." "No sign of the mother?" "None," I said, pointing to the drag marks. "But I found this. Doesn't look right." She frowned, shining her own flashlight on the ground. "That's not a bear. Could be human, maybe a vehicle." She looked at me, her eyes serious. "Michael, these cubs shouldn't be here. Something happened to their mother, and it wasn't an accident." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice low. "I mean someone might have left them here on purpose," she said. "Or worse. We need to get them somewhere safe, but we have to be careful. If someone's involved, they could be watching." My skin prickled. I glanced at the cubs, their cries softer now, but still piercing. I wanted to scoop them up, take them inside, but Emma was right. This wasn't just about 2 lost animals. Something bigger was going on, and I was already in the middle of it. "Let's get them to your clinic," I said. "Can you take them?" "I can stabilize them," she said, pulling out a blanket from her bag. "But we need to figure out what's happening. If someone's hunting bears out there, they won't like us poking around." I nodded, helping her gently wrap the cubs in the blanket. They squirmed but didn't fight, too weak to resist. As we loaded them into her truck, I took one last look at the yard. The flashlight caught something glinting in the grass, a piece of metal, half buried. I walked over and picked it up. It was a bullet casing, fresh, not rusted. My heart sank. This wasn't just a lost mother. Someone had been here, and they'd been armed. Emma called from the truck. "Michael, you coming?" "Yeah," I said, pocketing the casing. "I'll follow you." As her taillights disappeared down the road, I stood there, the weight of that casing heavy in my hand. The cubs' cries still echoed in my head, mixing with memories of Lily's voice. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I knew one thing. Those cubs needed me. And maybe, just maybe, I needed them too. The next morning, I woke up with the cubs' cries still ringing in my ears, even though they were safe at Emma's clinic. I hadn't slept much, my mind stuck on that bullet casing I'd found in the grass. It was sitting on my kitchen counter now, glinting under the morning light, a reminder that something dark was out there. I poured a cup of coffee. The smell grounded me, and tried to piece it together. 2 bear cubs, alone, and signs of someone, maybe a hunter, maybe worse, near my house. This wasn't just a coincidence. I needed answers. I drove to the station. The spring air crisped through my open window. The mountains loomed in the distance, green and alive, but they felt heavy today, like they were hiding secrets. At the station, I found Jack, my partner, leaning back in his chair, sipping coffee like nothing was wrong. He was 50, grizzled, the kind of cop who'd seen it all and stopped caring years ago. I trusted him, mostly, but his cynicism could grind you down. "Morning, Mike," he said, barely looking up. "You still playing hero with those cubs?" "They're not a game, Jack," I said, sitting across from him. "They were left in my yard. Something's off. I found a bullet casing, fresh. Someone was out there." He raised an eyebrow, setting his mug down. "You think someone's hunting bears near your place? That's bold. Probably just kids messing around." "Not kids," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "There were drag marks, 2, heavy ones. I think the mother's dead, and someone didn't want those cubs found." Jack sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, Mike, I get it. You're attached. But we've got real cases, burglaries, a missing hiker. Let the wildlife folks handle the cubs. Call Fish and Game. Let them deal with it." I clenched my jaw. I wasn't handing them over. Not yet. Those cubs needed me, and I wasn't ready to admit why that mattered so much. "I'm looking into it myself," I said. "Just cover for me if anyone asks." He shook his head but didn't argue. "Suit yourself. Just don't get in over your head." I left the station and headed to my neighbor Lisa's place. She was 60, lived alone in a cabin half a mile from me, and knew these woods better than anyone. If anyone had heard or seen something, it'd be her. Her yard was full of wildflowers, blooming bright in the late spring sun, but her face was grim when she opened the door. "Heard about your visitors," she said, waving me inside. "Coffee?" "I'm good," I said, sitting at her cluttered kitchen table. "Lisa, those cubs didn't just wander into my yard. I found a bullet casing, drag marks. You know anything about hunters around here?" She poured herself a cup, her hands steady but her eyes distant. "Been hearing things at night," she said. "Trucks, voices, out in the woods. Not locals. I've seen traps, too. Nasty ones, the kind that don't just catch, they kill. Brazen, leaving them that close to houses. Brazen's one word for it," I said, my stomach tightening. "You think it's poachers?" "Poachers, or worse," she said, sitting down. "Bears are worth money. Pelts, claws, even cubs for those sick pet trades. Been happening more lately. You keep those cubs close, Michael. Someone might come looking." Her words hit hard. I thanked her and headed out, my mind racing. Poachers. It made sense, but it didn't explain why the cubs ended up at my house. I drove to the edge of the forest near my place, parked, and started walking the trails. The air was warm now, birds chirping, but I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. I found what Lisa was talking about 20 minutes in, a steel trap, half hidden under leaves, its jaws rusted but sharp. It was empty, but there was blood on the ground dried and dark. My heart sank. This was no accident. I took photos, marked the spot, and kept moving. The deeper I went, the quieter the forest got, like it was holding its breath. I found more signs, tire tracks, a cigarette butt, a scrap of fabric caught on a branch. Someone had been here, and they weren't trying too hard to cover their tracks. I was about to head back when I heard a branch snap behind me. I spun around, hand on my holster, but nothing, just trees, shadows, and my own heartbeat. I waited, listening, but the forest stayed silent. Too silent. Back at my house, I checked the yard again, hoping for more clues. The drag marks were still there, leading into the trees, but I noticed something new. A faint tire track in the mud near my driveway. It was fresh, maybe from last night. My blood ran cold. Someone had been here, maybe while I was with the cubs. I pulled out my phone to call Emma, needing to know the cubs were okay. She answered fast. "Michael, good timing. I was about to call you. They okay?" I asked, my voice tight. "They're stable," she said, "but they're restless, like they're scared of something. I've got them in a secure pen, but I don't know, I've got a bad feeling. Can you come by?" "On my way," I said, already heading to my truck. As I hung up, I glanced at the woods. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across my yard. For a second, I thought I saw movement, a shape too big to be an animal, slipping between the trees. I blinked, and it was gone. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was just tired. But as I drove to Emma's clinic, that bullet casing felt heavier in my pocket, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever left those cubs wasn't done with me yet. The next day, I was at Emma's clinic before the sun was fully up, the spring mist still clinging to the fields. The cubs were in a pen out back, and their soft whimpers hit me as soon as I stepped out of my truck. They were curled up together. They're for a little cleaner now, but their eyes still carried that same fear I'd seen 2 nights ago. I couldn't shake the image of that tire track in my driveway, or the feeling that someone was watching. But standing there, watching those cubs, I felt something else, a pull, like they were mine to protect. Emma came out, wiping her hands on a towel. She looked tired, her red hair messy, but she managed a small smile. "They're eating better," she said, nodding toward the cubs. "But they're still stressed. I'm mixing formula for them now. Want to help?" "Yeah," I said, following her inside. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and hay, a mix that was oddly comforting. She showed me how to prepare the bottles, her hand steady as she measured out the powder. I watched the cubs through the window, their tiny paws twitching as they slept. "They remind me of someone," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Emma glanced at me, her eyes soft but curious. "Who?" I hesitated, my throat tight. "My daughter, Lily. She passed 5 years ago. Cancer. She was only 5. Those cries, the way they look at me, it's like she's there, asking me to keep them safe." Emma stopped stirring the formula, her face still. "I'm so sorry, Michael," she said. "I can't imagine." I nodded, looking away. "It's why I can't let them go. Not yet." She reached out, touching my arm lightly. "You're doing the right thing, but we need to be smart. If someone's out there, they might not stop at the mother." I knew she was right. The bullet casing, the trap, the tire tracks. It all pointed to trouble, but I didn't want to think about that now. I just wanted to focus on the cubs. We took the bottles outside, and I knelt by the pen, holding one out. The smaller cub, the one with a patch of lighter fur, sniffed it, then latched on, its eyes locked on mine. My chest ached. For a moment, it was just me and them, the world quiet. "You're a natural," Emma said, feeding the other cub. "They trust you." "I don't know about that," I said, but I felt it, that fragile bond forming. We spent the next hour building a sturdier pen in her backyard, using wood planks and wire mesh. The cubs watched us, occasionally letting out little grunts. It felt good to do something with my hands, to build something safe. But as we worked, Emma opened up, her voice low. "I lost someone too," she said, hammering a nail. "My brother, 2 years ago. Car accident. He was my best friend. I moved here to start over, but it's hard, seeing you with these cubs. It makes me think maybe we're not as alone as we feel. I looked at her, surprised. She'd always seemed so put together, but there was a crack in her armor now. I'm glad you're here, I said. For them. And maybe for me. She smiled, a real one this time, and we kept working. But the moment didn't last. My phone buzzed, and it was Jack. His voice was clipped when I answered. Mike, we got a problem, he said. Fish and game's coming for the Cubs. Someone tipped them off. Said you're keeping them illegally. They'll be at Emma's by noon. What? I stood up, my heart racing. Who tipped them? No idea, he said. But they're serious. You need to figure this out. Fast. I hung up, my hand shaking. Emma looked at me, worried. What's wrong? They're coming for the Cubs, I said. We've got a few hours to figure out how to keep them safe. She nodded, her jaw tight. We'll stall them. But Michael, if poachers are involved, this would get ugly. I knew she was right, but I wasn't giving up. I drove back to the forest near my house, needing to find more evidence before the authorities showed up. The woods were quiet, the late spring sun filtering through the pines. I followed the trail from the trap I'd found yesterday, moving deeper until I spotted something new. A boot print clear as day, in the mud. It was fresh, maybe from last night. My pulse quickened. This wasn't an animal. This was human. I crouched, snapping a photo, when I heard it, a rustle in the bushes, too heavy for a deer. I stood, hand on my gun, scanning the trees. Nothing moved, but the air felt wrong, like the forest was holding its breath again. I backed away, keeping my eyes on the shadows, and headed to my truck. I needed to get back to Emma, make sure the Cubs were secure. As I drove, my mind raced. The boot print, the tire tracks, the bullet casing, it was all connected. Someone was hunting, and they'd left those Cubs at my house for a reason. Maybe to warn me, maybe to distract me. I was almost at the clinic when I heard it. A sharp crack, like a firecracker, echoing through the hills. A gunshot. It was close, too close. My hands gripped the wheel, my heart pounding. I floored the gas, praying I wasn't too late. The gunshot still echoed in my head as I sped toward Emma's clinic, the tires screeching on the gravel road. My hands were sweaty on the wheel, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Were the Cubs okay? Was Emma safe? The late spring sun was high now, but it did nothing to shake the chill running through me. That boot print I'd found, the bullet casing, the tire tracks, they were pieces of a puzzle, and I was starting to see the ugly picture they formed. I pulled into the clinic's lot, my truck skidding to a stop. Emma was outside, her face pale, clutching a phone. The Cubs' pen was intact, and I could hear their soft grunts from inside. Relief hit me, but it was short-lived. You heard it too? She asked, her voice tight. Yeah, I said, scanning the tree line. Too close. You okay? For now, she said, but Fish and Game called. They're on their way. We need to move the Cubs. Move them where? I asked, my heart sinking. If poachers were out there, nowhere felt safe. I've got a friend with a wildlife rehab center an hour away. She said, they can take them, keep them off the radar. But we need to go now. I nodded, my jaw tight. Let's do it. We loaded the Cubs into crates, their whimpers cutting through me as we secured them in her truck. I kept my gun close, my eyes on the woods. That gunshot wasn't random. Someone was out there, and they were close. We were about to leave when I stopped. I need to check something first. I said, that shot came from the forest near my place. I can't let it go. Emma grabbed my arm. Michael, it's not safe. Wait for backup. No time, I said. Get the Cubs out of here. I'll meet you at your friend's place. She hesitated, then nodded. Be careful. I watched her drive off, the Cubs' crates bouncing in the back. Then I headed to the forest, the same trail where I'd found the boot print. The air was heavy, the birds quiet, like they knew something I didn't. I moved fast, following the path deeper until I spotted something. A shack, half hidden by pines, its wood weathered and sagging. My pulse quickened. This wasn't a hiker's cabin. This was deliberate, off the grid. I approached, gun drawn, and pushed the door open. The smell hit me first, blood and rot. Inside was a mess. Pelts stacked in a corner, knives on a table, a rifle propped against the wall. Bear claws, dried and bagged, sat on a shelf. My stomach churned. This was a poacher's hideout, and it wasn't abandoned. A half-eaten sandwich sat on the table, fresh. Someone had been here recently. I found a notebook, pages filled with dates and locations, hunting spots, drop-off points. One entry caught my eye. Grizzly, female, 2 cubs, May 10th, taken near Ridge Road. That was 2 days ago, right by my house. The mother was dead, no question. But why leave the cubs? I flipped another page and froze. A name was scrawled in the margin, Sheriff Holt. My boss, the guy I'd reported to for 15 years. My blood ran cold. Was he involved? I took photos of everything, my hands shaking, and slipped the notebook into my pocket. I was about to leave when I heard a truck engine outside. I ducked behind a crate, heart pounding, as boots crunched on the gravel. A man stepped inside, tall, bearded, carrying a rifle. I didn't recognize him, but his eyes were cold, scanning the room like he knew something was off. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't see me. He grabbed a bag of claws and left, the truck roaring away. I waited 5 minutes, then bolted. Back at my truck, I called Emma. "You safe?" I asked. "Yeah," she said, her voice low. "We're almost there." "What did you find?" "Proof," I said. "Poachers. And maybe a bigger problem. I'll explain later. Keep the cubs hidden." I drove to my house, needing to regroup, but Jack was waiting in my driveway, his cruiser parked crooked. His face was grim, and I knew something was wrong. "They found you, didn't they?" he said, stepping out. "Fish and Game's got a warrant. They're at the clinic now." "Emma got them out," I said, my voice hard. "But I found a poacher's shack, Jack. Pelts, weapons, a notebook. And Holt's name was in it." He froze, his eyes narrowing. "You're in over your head, Mike. I knew about the poachers. Been going on for years. Holt's been turning a blind eye, taking a cut. I didn't say anything because, hell, what could I do? You knew?" I stepped toward him, my fists clenched. "Those cubs' mother is dead because of this, and you sat on it?" "I'm sorry," he said, looking away. "I thought it'd stay small. But you're stirring things up, and they're not going to let you keep those cubs." I didn't have time to process his betrayal. A truck roared down the road, the same one I'd seen at the shack. The bearded man stepped out, rifle in hand, his eyes locked on me. "You've been poking around," he said, his voice low. "Bad move." I drew my gun, my heart racing. "Drop it," I said. "You're under arrest." He laughed, raising his rifle. "You think you're walking away from this?" Jack stepped between us. "Hands up! Easy, both of you. Mike, put it down." He's not alone. I glanced at the trees and saw movement. 2 more men, armed, closing in. My stomach dropped. I was outnumbered, and the truth was bigger than I thought. Holt wasn't just ignoring the poachers. He was one of them. The air was thick with tension. The bearded poacher's rifle aimed at my chest, his 2 buddies closing in from the trees. Jack stood between us, hands raised, his voice steady but his eyes darting. My gun was still in my hand, but I knew I was outmatched. The late spring sun cast long shadows across my driveway, and all I could think about was the cubs, safe with Emma, and the notebook in my pocket that tied Sheriff Holt to this mess. I'd come too far to back down now. "Jack, step aside," I said, my voice low. "This isn't your fight." "Don't be stupid, Mike," he snapped, glancing back at me. "You're going to get us both killed." The poacher smirked, his finger twitching on the trigger. "Last chance, cop. Drop it, or we end this right here." My heart pounded. But I thought of Lily, her face flashing in my mind, and those cubs, their cries echoing from that first night. I couldn't let them down. I lowered my gun, slow and deliberate, setting it on the ground. "Okay," I said. "Let's talk." The poacher laughed, but he didn't shoot. He nodded to his men, who lowered their weapons but stayed close. "You've got guts," he said. "Too bad you're in the wrong game. Holt said you'd be trouble." "Holt," I said, my stomach twisting. "So it's true. He's running this?" The poacher's eyes narrowed. "You think you got it all figured out, don't you? Holt's just a piece. This is bigger than him. Bigger than you. Before I could respond, Jack lunged, grabbing the poacher's rifle. A shot rang out, grazing Jack's arm, and chaos erupted. I dove for my gun, firing at the ground near the other two men to scatter them. Jack wrestled the poacher to the dirt, blood dripping from his sleeve. "Run, Mike," he yelled. "Get to the cubs." I didn't hesitate. I sprinted to my truck, the poacher's men shouting behind me. Tires screeched as I peeled out, my phone buzzing with a text from Emma at rehab center. "Cub safe. Hurry." I floored it, the forest blurring past, my mind racing. Holt wasn't just taking bribes. He was deep in this, and I'd been blind to it for years. But worse, I was starting to question myself. Had I missed something that night the cubs showed up? Was I part of this somehow? An hour later, I pulled into the rehab center, a quiet compound tucked in the mountains. Emma was waiting outside, her face a mix of relief and worry. The cubs were in a shaded pen, wrestling with each other, their grunts softer now. They looked content. My chest tightened. I'd fought so hard to get them here, but the cost was piling up. "You made it," Emma said, hugging me quick. "What happened? You look like hell." I told her everything. The shack, Holt's name, Jack's betrayal, the standoff. Her eyes widened, but she didn't flinch. "We need to go public," she said. "Get this to someone outside Holt's reach." "Not yet," I said. "I need proof that sticks." "That notebook's a start, but it's not enough." She nodded, glancing at the cubs. "They're safe here, Michael. The center's off the grid, no paper trail. But I got a call from a contact at Fish and Game. They found the mother's body yesterday near your house. She was shot, but not by a poacher's gun. Ballistics matched the service weapon, like one of ours." My blood ran cold. A service weapon? That meant a cop. Holt? Jack? Or me? I hadn't fired my gun off duty in months, but doubt crept in. Had I been set up? That night the cubs appeared, I'd been half asleep, shaken. Could I have missed something? "I need to see that report," I said, my voice hoarse. "I'll get it," she said. "But Michael, you need to decide what you're willing to risk. These cubs are safe now. You can walk away." I looked at the cubs, their tiny paws batting at each other, and thought of Lily. "I can't," I said. "Not until I know the truth." The next week was a blur. Emma got the ballistics report, confirming the mother was killed with a police-issued bullet. But the gun wasn't mine. I sent the notebook to a state investigator I trusted anonymously and kept my head down. Jack survived, but he was in the hospital, refusing to talk. Holt was under scrutiny, but he was slippery, covering his tracks. The poachers vanished like they'd never been there. The cubs were officially transferred to a sanctuary, a place where they'd learn to be wild again. Emma and I drove up to say goodbye, the spring air warm and heavy with the scent of wildflowers. We stood by their new enclosure, watching them tumble in the grass, their cries replaced by playful grunts. My heart ached, but it was a good ache. "You did it," Emma said, her voice soft. "You saved them." "Did I?" I asked, staring at the cubs. "Or did I just make things worse?" She didn't answer, just squeezed my hand. We drove back in silence, and I dropped her at the clinic. That night, I stood in my yard, the same spot where I found the cubs. The forest was quiet, the stars bright above the pines. I thought about the mother, the bullet, Holt's betrayal, and my own doubts. Had I been too late to save her? Had I been played from the start? The truth was out there, but it was tangled, and I might never unravel it. I closed my eyes, listening to the silence of spring, and felt a strange peace. The cubs were safe. Lily's memory was still with me. Maybe that was enough. Or maybe it wasn't. I'd let the world decide.